Hey everyone, welcome back to the Meme Team podcast, where we discuss viral pop culture moments in movies, TV, music, sports, tech, and politics. I'm your host, Sonia. This week, we're talking about hope in two political speeches from last week, one from Obama, one from Mamdani, and how people reacted to them, how brands are dealing with FIFA's rule to remove logos, what actually separates smart rapid response from newsjacking, and how Shrek's latest trailer is swamped with accusations of the sameness disease. My guest this week is Ashwin Balakrishnan. He works with B2B startups about what happens when their brands let their identity get sanded down to something inoffensive and forgettable, which is pretty much the theme for today's episode, I think. Ashwin, welcome to the show.
Sonia, thanks for having me on. Love the show, and I'm super happy to be a guest.
Awesome. Let's dive right in. Last week, these two speeches kind of took over my timeline. And part of the reason is that they gave permission to audiences to feel hope for what seems to be like a really long time. Obama opened his presidential library. Obama said, "It's tempting to give in to cynicism and even despair. I do not believe that is the story of America that prevails in the end." He framed his center not as nostalgia, which is all the rage right now, especially around Obama and the Obama years, but as a forward-looking institution. America's story isn't frozen in the past. It has chapters yet to be written, not by one person or a few people, not by Barack or Michelle or anybody with a fancy title or higher office, but by all of us. It was a bold speech, much as like he's kind of known for, because he didn't mention, anybody specific. It was just mostly kind of speaking to the feeling that a lot of us are feeling these days. It goes again to show what an excellent communicator he is and how he's able to kind of tap into the moment. And then that's, paralleled by Mamdani and his speech for the Knicks winning. And he said, so often when the city comes together, it is because we are forced to by a moment of tragedy or adversity. What a gift it is to be brought together by pure, unfiltered joy. And I thought that was so cool because that's what it seemed the celebrations have been, from, here from LA, I'm sure from, India where you are, just seeing everybody come together and have the parade. And all the photos that we were seeing of people like in the moment celebrating, pair that with like the Nike commercial, which did the same, which is like make it about the fans and make it about, that moment in time that, they'd been fighting for so long, and to be able to feel that, joy. And I think that really came across in the speeches. People want to feel joy and want to feel good, and I feel like brands, can do that. A lot of, marketing can do that. Your messaging can change to be more hopeful and be more about joy than to focus on, rage baiting people. I've been calling that my Monsters Inc. theory of marketing, where it's like you want to move people away from scaring them and making them angry, and instead move them over to laughing, because that joy compounds. And much like in the movie, you'll see like 10x returns than you would have done if you would piss them off. I think about this particularly today because I don't know if you saw this, but the DoorDash ad where they're like tagging T-Pain instead of the New Zealand scorer is towing the line between like, is this like joyful because it's like, oh, you're making this like mistake of like, mixing up who the two people are, or is it you're rage baiting because you're like involving somebody that didn't know that they were being involved, but turns out it's an ad now, so now people are getting mad that it is. So I don't know if you saw any of those, but would love to know your thoughts.
I love that you brought that T-Pain example up, because when I watched both these speeches, and then when you compare it to what DoorDash did, like both those speeches felt heartfelt, organic, true to who those two individuals were. And then this DoorDash thing is like this very forced effort, right? It's like, is this really who you are? Is this really what DoorDash is about? And when you look at, I'll talk about Barack Obama's speech first. He's always been somebody who unearthed some uncomfortable facets of American society. People found a reason to dislike him, despite the fact that he actually made the country better, more organized. Yeah, he had some policies that didn't work out, but for the most part, like he really tapped into that social fabric of what America's about and what Americans want from their lives.
Yeah.
And I feel like his, not just the speech, but like the opening of the museum represents, like you said, a glimmer of hope. And that was his initial campaign. It was like he just ran on hope, and he's still doing that
Mhm.
20 years later. And I think the fact that he hasn't changed is partly rooted in the fact that he was running as his true self back then, but it just highlights how few politicians, and in particular former presidents, how few of them are genuinely loved by large portions of the American public. And I think
Mhm.
that's a trend we see everywhere. You know, we don't really have a lot of former world leaders who are looked upon really favorably, like we used to. And they're not really statesmen anymore. We don't think of them as statesmen and stateswomen. Think of them as politicians, people who are out to make their lives better. And that distrust that people have. Yeah, there's some unsavory comments on that YouTube video of Obama's speech, but whenever I talk to people, it's like, all right, look, even if you don't agree with his policies, most people still admire the guy. He's well spoken. He has believed in the same things his whole life. I
Mhm.
think the reason people felt it is because they don't see that a lot these days. And so that
Mhm.
authenticity, like this is a word that gets thrown around in marketing,
Yeah.
but he really just is his authentic
Mhm. Mhm.
self. And I think that's really refreshing. And it's the same thing with Zoran. It doesn't sound like the mayor talking to people. It's just another New
Mhm.
Yorker. It's just another Knicks
Mhm.
fan. You can't imagine any of the former mayors of New York talking about, Michael Bridges proved that every single draft
Yeah.
pick was worth it. Like just
Yeah.
the way that he spoke was like he was
Yeah.
just another guy on the street. He's a fan of the Knicks. You could see that he's just so happy. He didn't make it about him or
Mhm.
about the city. He made it about the Knicks. And it was
Yeah.
like there was this beautiful transition from what the Knicks represent to
Mhm.
New York and the New York metropolitan area over to, how he would like the city to come together and be
Yeah.
happy and be one. And a lot of the stuff that he's putting together for New York in the summer, it's designed to get people outside and talk to each other and meet and be in the same space. New York is uniquely set up to take advantage of that. But I feel like more big cities need to have that. More
Mhm.
programs designed to just let people mingle again. And so when I look
Mhm.
at both of those speeches and I look at some of the stuff that brands do with marketing, particularly around the World Cup, they weren't marketing efforts. Like they were good branding moments, but they weren't concerted, conscious marketing efforts. And I think that's why it worked. And I think that's when really good marketing works, when a company or a brand says, hey, here's what we believe in, here's what we stand for. We're not going to force it and we're not going to make it look orchestrated. And we're just going to let stuff happen organically.
I don't necessarily think it's organic versus inorganic or like how quickly it comes together, right? Because last week we talked about the Nike commercial, which was obviously planned out, in advance. It's like, you got the idea, the kernel of like what it's going to be about. Maybe the difference was it felt like of the moment, taking the idea of like what was already happening at, the Knicks games, right? Which is like about the fans, getting them come out to party, watch them on the TVs, like watch them with, random other like strangers, right? But it's like you have this one thing in common, which is the Knicks, right? Whereas the DoorDash thing felt like, at first, when it felt as if it could have been a mistake, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, how funny is that? Ha ha ha, right? But the more that they kept at it, like it just like removed the possibility of it being an authentic moment that they like, that social media made a mistake at. But then also, the way it seemed to be attacking T-Pain, right? Like, where it's just like you were trying to
Yeah.
get his attention and you were trying to like get him to respond. And then after like, the fourth or fifth tweet, I was like, okay, now you're just like bugging the man. Like, leave him be. Like this is fucked up,
Yeah.
But then it
Yeah.
turns out he was in on it. And so I got mad at both of them because now I'm like, this is stupid. This is so dumb. Like, why are you doing this to people and making them feel all these things and like come out in defense of T-Pain for a thing that he was in on, Like that's I think like where it ended up being really annoying for me.
Yeah. Organic in the sense that it doesn't feel like you're forcing it.
Mhm.
It feels like, okay, it just comes out naturally. We talk about taste a lot these days.
Mhm. Or
In
the
the
lack thereof.
sense of or the lack thereof. Uh, People have a radar for bullshit,
Mhm.
and I think a big part of taste is knowing when your marketing crosses the line from planned business effort into just
Mhm.
outright bullshit
Yeah.
and not letting it go that far. And if DoorDash had done something else, like I'm just thinking off the cuff, like if they'd sent T-Pain a bunch of deliveries, you know,
Mhm.
instead of just tagging him on Twitter, it's like you're just pushing it into a medium that has nothing to do with anything that you represent.
Mhm.
And okay, if you had done the delivery thing, maybe it still would have felt forced, but at least it's in your zone. I don't
Mhm.
like the phrase like stay in your lane, but this is
Yeah.
essentially what that is. I work in the more boring world of B2B, but it would be like a sales software trying to talk to me about how to write code or something.
Mhm,
It's
mhm,
just like
mhm.
you have nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
At least try to work your brand into it somehow. So then
Mhm.
at least there's a connection to what you do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A bigger thing here that I felt kind of happened with the two speeches is the fact that the World Cup is going on right now, and like
Mhm.
it seems like for the first time in a really long time, most of America is joyful and participating, not just because America is doing better than they have in a really long time, but it's like something to be proud of and to be joyful around, but then also in how people are coming together for like the different nations. I feel the fact that we have so many underdog stories is like very,
Yeah.
such an American thing, right? Because we know Americans love underdogs, and you want to cheer on like the small countries competing against the big countries. But you're also seeing the United States for the first time, like be able to go up against teams that, are meant to be better
Yeah.
than us, right? And I think that people are already in that spirit and have that spirit of hope. So the fact that Obama and Mamdani came and like talked about that hope of America, hope of the future, hope of politics, while not entirely making it about politics, one of the
Yeah.
other lines that Mamdani said was he pointed to the 0.4% comeback odds for game 4, and put that in the sense of like that's what we're doing here in New York as well, is taking
Yeah.
that 0.4% and trying to build on that by coming back and doing the fixing the potholes and fixing the public transportation and fixing housing and doing all these like little moments that will get you to like a bigger win, but it takes everybody coming together and wanting that and building on it, and I think that putting it in the context of like a sports metaphor that people really like know and understand a lot more than like boring political stuff, is such a like brilliant move. But it also shows that like Mundani, he knows ball, right? Like he
Yeah.
like you mentioned that earlier, where like this the idea that like he seems multifaceted, right? Like he was talking about the Knicks, and then he was able to go talk about the World Cup because he also knows soccer. He's able to go and talk about hip hop and like artists. He's able to talk about like, politics and stuff. And it shows what I think is like the future for like politicians, particularly millennial and like Gen Z ones, where it's like we have more facets to our personalities, and people expect more from us than just the one thing that we're meant to be good at, right? It also reminds me of
Yeah.
when Timothy Chalamet went on college game day football, and I think he was the only one that correctly, like not guess, but bet on who the winning teams are going to be for that day. And it
Yeah.
shows that it's like, yes, acting is like his livelihood, but he also pays attention to all these other things, right? And I think that that's like a thing that brands can also use for themselves, where it's like people aren't just going to like your brand for like one specific thing. Like, how do you talk to the different moments in their lives versus maybe when they don't need you in that particular moment, but you're
Yeah.
always like in the back of their heads?
The only way that works is you have to come from that world. You have to
Hmm.
live that life. Like
Hmm.
the reason Mamdani sounds so affable when he talks about basketball or football or rap or whatever it is, it's because that's just who he is. He's not doing this stuff
Hmm.
to score points. He's not doing it for content. This is just who he is. And
Hmm.
that speech would not have gone differently if he'd like grown up in a suburb of New York, or if he'd grown up across the river in New Jersey, or if he'd supported the Nets as a kid. It was just this confluence of factors that he he's lived in New York proper since he was a kid. He supported the Knicks. He's been going to MSG since he was a kid. He just happens to be the mayor of New York. But that
Hmm.
was, for me, that was just another Knicks fan getting up there
Yeah. No, I love that. Yes, he is, just like Obama, he is like a once in a generation like talent for
Yeah.
politics, and like political speeches. Maybe that's who we should be like focusing on, right? To do that kind of thing is like people that come from the cities, and want to be like a true like public servant, you know?
Yep.
Sometimes it feels like the most egotistical and the most narcissistic people are the ones that like end up becoming politicians. So maybe that's on us to also be demanding more of our politicians,
Yeah.
because now that we do see that it is possible for someone to know and love the city that they're from and actually put in the work, maybe it's on us to start, asking more. um Okay, a couple lessons here. Joy-based solidarity is undersupplied in political content right now. I talked about this recently by honing in on this thing that I'm calling competency porn, and I talked about it being about like Project Hail Mary and Artemis 2 going to like the moon and back, and how people
Hmm.
just want to see people be very competent at what they're doing. And I think
Yep.
Mamdani and Obama are like perfect examples of like political competency, right? Where it's like they're doing their job so well that it's making the rest of us be like, wait, they can just do that? Like politicians.
Shouldn't the rest of you be
Yeah,
doing that too?
exactly, right? The other thing too is that specificity is what made the hope credible. The fact that that Mamdani was able to turn to like the Knicks win and use this sports win, the sports metaphor as like a way to talk about politics in a way that is actually understandable to us. It's like, yeah, we're down right now, right? We're like we have this 0.4% chance of like winning, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible, you know? So that hope, that possibility, is something that, the rest of us need to imbue in like our lives. But I think for brands in particular, you can be doing similar is like, where is the joy in using your product or using your service that you can point to? Who are those customers that you can highlight that show that like they love your brand so much? I think that, many people, many customers, users want to see brands in that light and not just have it be about like, hey, this is the brand, this is what we sell. Like that's not good enough
Yeah.
anymore. People want more from the brands. And people are actually like looking for that now, there's, I feel like less loyalty, like less brand loyalty than ever. So it's like, how do you find a different way to get in front of people?
You can't live on Long Island and be the mayor of New York. The same principle applies to marketing. You can't sit away from your customers,
Hmm.
the people that you serve, the people that you're building for, and then suddenly expect them to play ball when it's time to buy. Like if you're not there for them when you don't need them,
Hmm.
they're not going to be there for you when you do need them. And so just spend more time with your customers, involve them in your marketing,
Uh-huh.
interview them, ask them like, what is it that you're dealing with? Don't
Hmm.
guess, like actually go talk to them. And, you know, talk to your customers is just thrown around everywhere, but you have to know what questions to ask. If the problem you're trying to solve is a ton of your customers keep canceling, ask them why. Like
Yeah.
it's just stupidly simple. But
Uh-huh.
so many brands just don't do this. So it's like, yeah, you have to be in there with them. You have to live life with them and you have to be in that world and you can't just sit 50 miles away and expect them to be there when you need them.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's reminding me of right now. It's the Norwegian international team, right? And the fact that
Yeah.
they've gone full tilt into this like Viking row chant, right? With that started as a fan chant that has now grown into like the team doing it after a win on the field, and like their
Yeah.
captain leading it. It's just like
To,
some of the best marketing ideas come from your fans that love you so
yeah,
much and
it's a
want to participate with
symbiosis.
you. You know,
It's a
so.
symbiotic relationship. Like
Hmm.
you have to give and take.
Yeah.
Yeah, just involve your customers in your marketing and suddenly
Mhm.
I promise everything becomes so much easier. I've done it myself a bunch of times.
Awesome.
Well, let's talk about something that's very personal to me, and that's Shrek. Um, yeah, I've been a fan of Shrek since I was a kid, since the first movie came out. I have merchandise, I have a framed poster, I have a ton of Shrek stuff. It was genuinely heartbreaking for me as a marketer to watch the recent trailer for Shrek 5 for two reasons. Number one is the animation is really different. It just doesn't have that fairy tale character anymore. It's just it looks like a Pixar or DreamWorks or any other studio. It just doesn't look like Shrek. And then the second thing is a lot of the dynamism in the animation. So like the little movements, the little ticks, the little things that made the characters unique, like all of that's gone. I've seen comments like, "Well, what was the production process? Hey, ChatGPT, make me a Shrek movie." Um, and it's so like I haven't seen a single positive comment about the trailer yet, and I can't say I feel like any of it is unwarranted because everybody's falling into this sea of sameness.
Mhm.
I see it in marketing, in B2B marketing, where everybody's using the same tools, the same workflows, the same prompts, everybody's producing the same stuff. And when I look at the Shrek trailer, it's like I can't tell this from any other IP. Like there was always this dreamlike fairy tale quality to Shrek. And now they've got like Donkey with lore accurate anatomy, like his hair is sticking out, his proportions are different, Shrek's proportions are different. And obviously like with this the voice actors are getting older, so like the voice is changing a little bit. It's just the uncanny valley.
I
Um
mean, the whole point of it, I thought, was like it was like the anti-Disney, right? Disney that's like very fairy tale like, and then Shrek comes out and is like the punk, right? The counterculture.
yeah.
It's still talking about fairy tales, but putting a spin on it.
The first one was written to have a lot of crude humor that Disney would have never allowed.
Mhm.
Uh, it was designed and animated in a way to be extremely distinct from what Disney was putting out at the time. Um, it was very much counterculture uh, when
Mhm.
it was produced. And I still remember I was old enough at the time to know a little bit better than most kids should. So
Mhm.
when I was watching it and there were jokes in there about, oh, he must be compensating for something. And I was like, should that really be in a movie? Because I think I was like, what, 11 or 12 the first time it came out.
Mhm.
But yeah, DreamWorks was supposed to be different. And
Mhm.
it's like seeing your childhood hero go play for it would be like watching Patrick Ewing go play for the Lakers or something or the Heat. I think with the background of AI and the way that people are using AI and the way that people are advocating for the use of AI, um, it is it is disappointing to see a, a very strong IP say, "Yeah, we're just gonna blend in and do what everybody else is doing and do the safe thing, the vanilla thing, instead of using these tools to be who we are." Instead
Yeah, yeah.
of using modern technology to deliver the same experience that people love this franchise for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I saw similar backlash happened with Disney's Text, where it's like the same thing where it's like all the animated figures look the same, right? With like the big eyes, the big face, the cheeks. And it's like what happened to, all the differences, but a lot of brands like you were mentioning earlier where it's like everyone has the same websites, right? And then the more that they
Yeah.
use, Claude and, ChatGPT to help them design things, to help them come up with like marketing materials and sales materials, the closer that everybody is going to appear because that's what AI does. That's what LLMs
Yeah.
do is they take what's the most popular that everybody's talking about and then when you use that idea, you're taking what everybody else is using. So everything comes out looking the same. And I think that that's like the biggest knock against AI. Like if you're using it to actually create assets for you, to do the copywriting for you, then you're just writing on top of what everybody else is doing. And so if you as a brand want to stand out, now is the time to start doing that because so many companies are taking the easy way, taking the cheap way to try to use AI to save money, to save time. We've talked about this being more as a battle between like AI versus craft. And it's interesting because I would have said that Disney and Pixar were on the side of craft, right? But now they're falling, prey to the tendency to want to save money, to cut back
Exactly.
costs. And how do you do that? using AI. Like, I'm not saying that they're necessarily using AI, but like defaulting to like what's easiest, what you already know has worked,
Yeah.
which is interesting because Disney is facing backlash for their Marvel and Star Wars franchises because everything is defaulting to the same characters that used to be popular, to the nostalgia of it all, right? Um, and people want new stories. We want different stories. We want original stories, right? And that's what we're
Yeah.
seeing happen in like horror, right? Obsession, Backrooms. There are all these new ideas that are twists on ideas, let's say, but at least it's like original content ideas that are being created by these, people that don't need as big of a budget, right? Seeing that popularity and then also seeing the like companies in luxury that are using the fact that they are luxury, that they can charge more to try to be different and, create that like luxury product or aesthetic versus like, the same old, Sheen like product because you're trying to save time and money, or product or whatever and make as much profit as possible. My thinking is with brands that want to separate themselves, it's like, fine, you might not be able to do it for everything, but, like, where can you do that?
Yeah. I think the bar for originality has never been lower than it is now. Uh, when I'm looking at new tools, new software, new products, it's just so fucking depressing to click into a website and see the same goddamn Claude generated layout. Like
Mhm,
I already have lost interest. The moment I see that font and that orange and cream colored color palette, I'm like, I know what kind of culture is behind this product and I
mhm,
don't want anything to do with it. And then when I happily click in and I see something different and novel, I might not have thought it was all that great 3 or 4 years ago, but today I'm like, "At least you're different.
mhm,
Let everything else fall to the side. At least you're being different. At least you're thinking for yourself." So when I work with brands on AI visibility, the thing I tell them before we work together is most brands are optimizing to be seen and to be noticed, but marketing is about being remembered.
mm,
Marketing is about capturing attention and then holding on to that attention long after the person has watched your ad or been to your website or engaged with your brand in some way. And so if you're optimizing, you're creating your content and your messaging and your positioning to be correct. I call it optimizing for sterility.
mhm.
Um, you want to be correct. You want to be in line with the rest of the industry or the rest of your category. No one's going to remember you. It's why we see the big companies get fatter. They make more money because people know who they are. They're the safe option. But if you're trying to be one of 5 safe options, people are always going to pick the biggest one or the second
Mhm,
biggest one. They're not going to pick number 3, number 4, number 5, number 162. So if you're in a crowded category, the only way you stand out is by being different. But not only is the bar for originality so low, I think marketers, leadership teams, founders, I think courage has never been rarer. Uh,
mhm.
and you need so little of it to step outside and say, we're not gonna do this with Claude. Or we're not gonna use AI for this. We're gonna do it ourselves. We're gonna be old school.
It just reminds me of that where it's like, how much are we losing by just, giving into, how easy it is to use AI?
Yeah. I don't know how accurate this is, but I did see a Reddit post about the Shrek trailer, and
Mm,
somebody was saying that they have a relative who's in the animation industry, and they asked him like, "Why does Shrek 5 look the way it does? Why does it not
mhm.
look like Shrek 1?" And his relative told him, "Well, we don't know how to do that anymore because all the people who knew how to do that have either been pushed out of the industry because of ageism or been laid off because they started making too much money, or they've gone on to different creative pursuits." And
Mhm,
so you start thinking in marketing, like, what happens in 10 years when all the people who knew how to do these things start transitioning out of the industry or getting pushed out of the industry? And like, who's coming through? I think there's going to be a very big gap, 5 to 10 years, where you're not going to have that transfer of knowledge from people who've been doing this for like 10, 15, 20 years to people who are now getting into the industry or who did 2 or 3 years ago. And suddenly, one fine day, those people are going to find themselves in a position where they need to know how to do things without dependency on these tools, and they're
Mhm.
not going to know.
Yeah, I think that's also a measure of what's happening across the industry in terms of um, senior people not taking on like a mentorship role, where it's like, well, why didn't any of those senior animators, help teach their art to the younger generations, right? Why aren't those like elder marketers, teaching the younger marketers, right? And we just don't have that level anymore, right? And we're also seeing that like the as things move forward, like they're wanting to have less apprenticeships and like ways of like teaching, junior marketers to like do anything. So that's, also on us, the older ones, to be teaching the younger generations the old art of, being able to write. Write's a big one. I think, yes, AI can help you with like, grammar and like, maybe moving things around here and there. But like, you need to know how to write in order for the AI to do it the way you want and to have
Yeah.
a distinctive voice, right? And I think that's a huge lesson for me here. It's like, as the pull to become efficient and like save money and turn to AI to like help you do these things, you're going to have to try to counterbalance that with being distinctive in some way. Maybe that's like in figuring out like, okay, maybe we can use AI for these things, but we're going to try to keep our personality and like our founder's vision and all that by doing these things and keeping certain aspects human. And maybe it's just like, the coding you can help, right? Like engineers and, product stuff, maybe use AI there, but then for like marketing, sales, you try to keep more of that humanness, right? I'm working with a client right now that they swear by the fact that them going to do sales calls in person is the reason why they're converting so many customers because so many people aren't sitting down and talking to like each other anymore, right? And as soon as they started talking about it, I was like, okay, yes, now that we know that you've converted enough people that it has made a difference, that's just your sales process now going forward. Don't try to like, cut pieces out because you're like, oh, we have to become efficient. Oh, we don't want to pay for flights. We don't want to, have all these people out. It's taking us a while longer. Okay, but those steps that you're taking, those like human relationships that you're building up are the reason why you're converting people. Then like why would you get rid of that? And
Yeah.
if you're competing against other companies that aren't doing those, then like you're already at an advantage, right? So it's like these are the things you have to look at in like where can we add the human back into our process because it actually makes a difference, right? Maybe the websites aren't as important anymore. Like fine, because now everything's getting like, AI trolled by, AEO and like SEO, right? That's fine. But maybe the marketing materials that you're creating can be more like human and speak to the audience that you want to like speak to. There just has to be a balance here because if not you're just going to be like every other company, and in a time when every other company is competing for the same customers, then like the customers is just going to go for the cheapest or like the one that like speaks to them most or like is like the biggest brand because it's like, what is that saying? Like no one ever got fired for, buying IBM, right? So, yeah, lesson for me there.
Yeah, my big takeaway is very much in line with what you said. Don't forget the things that got you to where you are. And they're not
Mhm,
necessarily what's going to take you from where you are to where you want to be, but
mhm,
there's going to be a little sliver of what you've done so far that carries you forward. And so
mhm.
maybe it takes a different shape or you apply it a different way, but that character, that soul, that has to continue forward. Um, Otherwise, one day your customers are going to look up and not recognize your company.
Cool. So let's move on to my topic, which I think right now is one of the most successful ways that like humans are doing marketing, and that's by doing rapid response on social media. So two examples from last week. One is Convene. They were on the path of the Knicks, and people were sitting on rafters around their storefront, and the N like kind of fell off. And instead of making it a negative thing of like, oh, these people are out here, destroying things, they just went and like updated their logo across all their social media platforms to have the N shifted. 3 hours after it was done, they posted it on Instagram. They changed the logo to Knicks colors. They got 67,000 views. That's like their best ever like post. Rachel Carton tweeted that that was quick, and that got 80,000 views. And then the other one is what Kraft did for like ranch, right? Like which takes a couple layers of like the onion, right? Like first it was that European account that tweeted about like why has nobody ever told me about ranch, right? And then TSA posted that like, hey, people that are flying, make sure you're not like putting in ranch bottles into your carry-on like items because it's going to get taken out, right? And then so like Kraft came out and said like, hey, we've created TSA proof ranch bottles for you to take on an airplane with you. It was just like this moment of like being so terminally online and like seeing things as it's happening and then being able to like respond quickly. And I think in a time when everything moves so fast, these are the opportunities that are like coming where it's like what can the people that are on the ground, social media, right, like that they're seeing, what can you do to like put your brand into that conversation? And I thought it was like, really interesting because I've seen like people say like Kraft isn't even the best like ranch brand out there, and it's like, but they were the fastest and they were the ones that were like able to jump in on the moment. And that's what makes it successful, right? And I think it's like one of those things where it's like, I know, we kind of like laugh about people just, trend jacking all the time and like trying to, do trends that don't really quite fit the moment or like what your brand is. Like we were talking about that earlier, where it's like it still has to make sense for your brand. So these things like make sense because it's like things that actually happen to you, right? Or like about ranch, where it's like for most of us, Kraft is the ranch brand. So the fact that they were able to turn around, go through legal, go through like the CEO, go through like the C-suite to have the approvals to get it and to turn around in like 3 hours, like that's really quick. Kraft took a couple days, but the point is that they were able to like do that. The fact that they were then able to create a product that they're going to be selling is even better, because then it shows that like it's just like a fun thing. I'll
Yeah.
also throw in that American Airlines. It wasn't like a rapid response, but it was like, we know this is happening. So from on a flight to Seattle for like the USA game, they put USA jerseys on like, every seat in an airplane. And so like a French citizen like that went on the airplane was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And the point of that is like, you'd never know who is listening to you. The way that the algorithm works these days is like, anybody could be talking about you. So you have to be able to like pay attention to like what's happening that you can jump in on. But then also, if you are going to start a conversation, you also have to have like your eyes on the ground of like who is actually talking about you. Who are you giving, lifting up to, talk about your brand in a way that like, maybe is unexpected, right? Like yes, it's easier when it's like an influencer and like, that they have an audience, but this was like a random European guy who like, got on the airplane, filmed, the airplane and then posted it and then went viral because of it. And then American Airlines was able to jump in and say like, oh yeah, we did this, did that. So Ashwin, did you see any of these campaigns? We'd love to know what you think about just rapid response in general, or companies responding
Yeah.
to people talking about them.
Yeah, the American airline one it's really interesting to me because there had to have been somebody who came up with that idea thinking, yeah, somebody's going to film it and put it up. We don't have to do it ourselves. That works because they really just understand how culture works, how people behave, and how people move.
Yeah.
Similarly with Convene, they leaned into their signage being not vandalized, but
Right.
definitely taking a bit of a hit,
Yeah.
and realizing that you don't want to get into this war or a war of words with New Yorkers, especially Knicks fans. And so it's like, all right, let's just let's just lean into this because their whole brand is about bringing people together and
Hmm.
gathering. And so like it was a very natural setting. They just leaned into it. But what I really love is the ranch. What was it? Diplomacy.
Yeah.
Diplomacy. Um, I have when I flew back from the US years ago, I had one of those big Hidden Valley bottles in my carry-on piece, and when I got home and I opened the suitcase, it had just exploded everywhere from the pressure. And I wish I could have had something that I could have just brought in with me on the plane. So I love that idea, and it really plays into again the theme of understanding the way society moves, the way culture behaves. Modern commerce is really it's not entirely about it, but it's really embracing the idea of limited edition drops, right? And you have it in merchandise, you have it in apparel, you have it in footwear. Nearly every single consumer segment has the limited edition drop. And so the window for what they're doing with the TSA compliant ranch kits, they have a bigger window with the World Cup going on. It really does feel like one of those limited edition
Hmm.
pieces where somebody might buy one so that they can actually consume it, but then they might also buy one just to kind of hang on to it and
Post
say,
about it.
like, yeah, I was there, take a
Yeah.
photo of it, but also just to have a piece, a talk piece in their house. So it's like, hey, here's the ranch kit from when I went to the
Yeah.
World Cup in the US. Um, it's it's great because like I said, it just combines real world constraints, real world limitations with how people behave, how culture moves.
Hmm.
And, for better or worse, a lot of this stuff is ephemeral. So what's popular today is going to be forgotten in a week or a month.
Hmm.
And yeah, if you don't stay on top of stuff and take advantage of it when it's there, it's gone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's like one of the things where I know many of us in like social media joke about how terminally online you have to be. And I think that that's just kind of table stakes these days, right? For you to be
Right.
able to jump in on those moments. Not only is social media a place where you're finding out what's happening, but it's also a place for you to have your ears to the ground of like what your consumer or your user is talking about. Not in regards to you necessarily, but about your industry. So these are the conversations that you have to be able to jump in on. Like, and it's also like really good market research for you to then take back about like what is it that you're building, how you're building it, are the product features that you're building or your, roadmap, where people want it to go, and yes, you can do that by also talking to your customers. But, if you're wanting to get more customers, it's a good way to figure out like what it is that they want from a product, or just even doing that competitive analysis of like what is it they like about your competitors, right?
Yeah.
Are there things that you could also be doing? And I think that like if you want to participate in conversations, you have to know what's happening. One. Two, you also have to set up a process internally in order to be able to respond quickly, right? Because otherwise, I mean, we see that happen to this day, right? Like we have brands that like respond to things like a month later, and you're like, this is old. This isn't even relevant anymore. And then when it doesn't do well, you're like, oh, well, like, why didn't it do well? And it's like, because nobody's talking about that thing anymore, you know?
Right.
And I think those are the things you have to try to take advantage of, right? I think that means you have to be able to allow the people that are in social media to take risks and experiment, right? Many times we get held up by like legal or like the C-suite doesn't understand something, so it just kind of gets put on pause. But it's like you have to trust that the people that you're hiring to do the job are going to do the job
Yeah.
to their best to the best of their ability. So that's a lesson for me. Like if you are gonna have like your ears to the ground, you also have to give the person that is that has that role to like make decisions or to come to you with ideas of like how you can experiment and try things out, and then give them the leeway to actually do it and not just like put a pause on it, or like yes, go through legal, or yes, go through products, or whatever, in order to like figure it out, and then to also create some sort of internal process in your company so that they can figure that out by themselves. Because speed is stable takes these days. You just have to be able to respond to the conversations that are happening on social media. That's what consumers, users expect these days from brands, especially the large ones, right? I think that was,
Yeah.
was really cool about Kraft doing this, because it was like, I sometimes I feel like the bigger brands are the slowest to be able to, jump in
Mhm.
on things. So the fact that they were able to turn this around that quickly, not just even like create, a fake post about, TSA compliant ranch, but to actually have a product that they can then sell to people, it is what like made this like super cool.
Yeah. Speed is absolutely important. Like it's been months since it happened, but even now, the only CEO that we talk about who went on camera eating his company's food is McDonald's because he was
Oh
the
yeah.
first one to do it. Nobody talks about the Burger King CEO. Nobody talks about Wendy's, Jack in the Box. They all did it. Every single one of them did it. But everybody remembers McDonald's because they started the whole thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. The other takeaway for me is like, in addition to speed, you also have to have somebody who really has their finger on the pulse of
Hmm.
your consumer base and understands how they behave, how they think, how they act, how they consume media. Uh, yeah, you need to get the right person and then just get the fuck out of their way.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're also seeing that with a lot of the World Cup stuff, right? All like the sports brands are like turning around, goal images, and the countries that are winning, like any like tie that they have to a player or to a country, they're
Mhm.
immediately posting about that. And that's some of the like the most highly engaged with content right now, because
Yeah.
everybody is talking about this, right? So when you have moments of monoculture like we have with the World Cup with the Knicks, if your brand can jump in on that in some way, like, do it.
Yeah, and then staying on the theme of World Cup marketing, FIFA is extremely notorious for this. They will not let any corporate logos be displayed on premises for World Cup matches uh, unless they're a sponsor. So you have to sponsor the event, the World Cup, and not just the venue that the World Cup is being hosted at, or something to do with the venue. You have to sponsor the World Cup directly. And so if you go into the hospitality boxes, they'll have rows of condiments, pretty much any sauce you could imagine, and they all have their logos and their brand marks completely redacted, like just tape on everything. And when somebody brings a refill in, you can't put the new bottle of ketchup down until you've blocked out Heinz and all of their trademarks and stuff like that. This extends to the exterior of the stadium as well. So Levi's have the naming rights to the stadium, and FIFA told them that they have to cover it up. Uh, and this is a regular thing. Like when a World Cup is being broadcast or the Champions League is being broadcast, they will not refer to any stadiums by their sponsorship names. It's just the name of the team or the city that they're in. Uh, but they're doing
Yeah,
this as
so for
well.
the folks that, if you are watching the World Cup, the reason why the stadiums are being called the Los Angeles Stadium, the San Francisco Stadium, the New Jersey,
Yeah,
New York Stadium instead of SoFi, MetLife and Levi
yeah,
Stadium is because of this.
yeah. It's all money.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, like, when they covered up the Levi's logo, like, they did it with the tarp in the shape of the actual logo outline, and everybody knows it's what logo it is.
Mhm,
When they cover up all the Heinz names on the packaging, everybody still knows what that bottle is. They know what the French's mustard bottle looks like. It's the same with like the Hellman's mayonnaise. There's so many identifiable brand marks available to these products that you can cover up the name, but people still know it. And I
mhm,
feel like when it comes to the digital side, it could be like a media brand or it could be a tech product. There's just not a lot of flexibility or opportunity to create something that transcends the name of the company. And I would love to know what you think in terms of if you're talking about a terminally online brand or a digital brand, a digital first brand, and there's no physical product to speak of, like how do you get remembered? What are the things that that you would like to see brands do?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is, what we're seeing here with like the logos, right? It was like Levi's covered it, but then it also became a social media campaign where it replaced the logos on all their social channels. So it was like part of like, haha, Levi's is showing you what their brand is anyway. But it's definitely, part of the logo already being iconic, right? So I feel like some tech companies already have that, right? Like the Google logo is pretty iconic just in terms of like the letters and the colors. As I'm going through like which companies, we're starting to see what we were talking about earlier, which is like that, like, reversion to the mean, where like so many companies are starting to like lose their sans serif font in order to become, serif font. And just like all of them are just becoming the word and
Yeah.
have like no other identifying feature. Like reminds me of there was that company, was it Bob's, Bob's like milk company that does like flour and like granola and stuff. They got rid of the old man and just made it the font, right? And it's funny because it's like that would be like an identifying feature, and
Yeah.
companies are removing it themselves to become, I don't know, more like boring. We saw it with Cracker Barrel last year, right? Where it's like they got rid of the man and the barrel. Um, and, there was such a backlash that they reverted back to it, right? Because people were like,
Yeah.
"Why would you do this?" So I think that's part of like, part of the same theme here, where it's like, how do you kind of build up, so much brand awareness that like, your users and your customers know you just from the way that like your logo looks, but then also in the way that you speak to them. Like, is there a particular
Yeah.
voice, like the Duolingo voice, right? Like we know Duolingo and they're like, what's that called? They're like insane marketing, right? It's funny because
Yeah.
the example earlier of like DoorDash, right? Like the Duolingo like person who made Duolingo the brand and have that voice and everything is now at DoorDash. So shouldn't surprise us that that's the unhinged marketing is starting to find its way to like DoorDash. But like, what are, things like that you can do? Is there a particular voice that sounds more like you? Is there, like, your values? Like, what are these different things that like are specific to your brand that you can highlight a little bit more, for your users and audience to like know about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. For me, the litmus test these days is uh, if we were to take the same piece of content or the same marketing asset that five other competitors in our category also have, and we took all of the identifying marks out of it and we put them into the same Claude layout, would people be able to tell that this is brand X versus brand Y?
Mm,
Uh, and what ends up happening is frequently people end up talking about the same things. And this is a big reason why I tell tech products not to over index on features for their messaging, because everybody has certain features that you really can't kind of differentiate on that. 'Cause tomorrow, somebody who doesn't have this feature that you have can come in and build that feature.
mhm,
But if you have a point of view on how the industry should function
mhm,
and how you want to move forward with it and what the industry could look like in 3 years and what you believe the role should look like, that's something that you have that other people don't have. If you bring your founder's experiences into it, I started this because I had a problem. I'm
mhm,
like the customer that I want to sell to. I come from that background. I know ball,
mhm,
that becomes an identifying tone of voice. And then when you just end up saying the same stuff, and especially if you're going to use LLMs to write it,
mhm,
I can't see a lot of opportunity to be different. And at the moment you come up in comparison with somebody who is doing those things differently and uniquely, it's really tough to win on, like, to be remembered, to win on uniqueness. Um,
mhm.
all of those things become extremely difficult. So, yeah, I think the way you talk, the way you build things, the way you go about uh, creating your marketing assets, all of this makes a huge difference in a world where there's no physical, tangible product.
Yeah, yeah. I think also recognizing the fact that they have such iconic like logos and brands that like people
Yeah.
still recognize the design and like shape of them, shows how important that actually is. And I think when companies give that up to like modernize, they're giving up a lot of their own personal brand equity, and,
Yeah.
like, why would you do that, Like, at a time when, like, everybody, wants to stand out and wants something different, these are the things that you should invest in, right? Like, what are things that are recognizable about our brand? The logo, our point of view, the voice, the CEO, the way they talk. This is, like, one of the reasons why, I focus on, yapping, as a thing where it's like, how do you get the CEO and people within the companies to talk about their knowledge in a way that is relatable and like gets people to understand what it is that you're building and why you're the best team to like build it. I think that like thought leadership still, there's so much room there for growth, for people's voices to come out and to show that like there's like we were talking earlier with like Obama and Mamdani, like why ball and like why your vision for the future, and the way that you think about things is what people want to get in on, right? It's
Yeah.
like if you can get people to like come around to your vision, then they'll become a like user or like a customer for your product. And I think that like there's not enough of that going out there, that like it's not just the brand itself that can separate itself, but also like the CEO. What is the CEO or the founder out there doing in order to show like why they care? And I think
Yeah.
that, coming back to that founder insight of why it matters, that like you're building this thing, like what was the thing that you think that you can do different from all the other companies, will invite people into the journey with you. And I know that we
Yeah.
rag on, the whole building in public a lot because like some of it can be cringe, but I still think that like storytelling and getting people to come in on the journey with you is one of the best ways to market to them, because you're not just selling to them a product, you're selling to them a vision of what you think the future is, for your industry. And then for the type of product that you're building, like why your product deserves to exist and what you're doing that's different, from all the other brands out there. Um, so that would be a lesson for this. But I think an overall lesson in everything, right? Because I kind of just brought in the Obama thing. Another thing, too, you can definitely bet on is that Obama and Mamdani both wrote their own speeches. They did not use
Mhm.
AI to come up with them. And it sounds so uniquely like them. I like that I can like listen to an Obama speech or even read an Obama speech and know that it's actually him writing it. And yes, he's worked with speechwriters and stuff, but what happens in those cases is that the speechwriter learns the cadences, the ideas, and like how the person actually like sounds. So it still sounds like them, and it's not like Obama sounds like the speechwriter, right? And I
Yeah.
think that more of us, can learn how to do that. Where it's like, how do we take the values of what we're trying to talk about, for our brand, and like write about that in a way that like is personable and human and brings that back to the brand itself.
Yeah. If I was gonna find one loop to tie everything we spoke about together, it is human in the loop is the wrong way to think about AI. It should not be a human in the loop. AI should be in the loop, right?
Mhm,
Human controls the process. Your
mhm,
team of experts that you've hired and who you hopefully pay really well, these are the people who've been busting their ass for years, decades in some cases, uh, to get really good at what they do. And to say we run with AI, but we have a human in the loop, just like demeans them to a supervisor status. And and I don't like that phrase. I don't like the phrase human in the loop because it
mm,
implies that the AI is more important, that the AI is creative, that the AI is the one that is building this thing, and the human's just there to kind of like move a couple of things around. Like when Obama works with a speechwriter, I'm
mhm,
pretty sure he has his speechwriter take a first pass, but there'll be passages where he's like, "No, that doesn't sound like me," or
Hmm.
"I've changed my mind on this. I don't feel like this anymore," or "This isn't coming through as powerfully as I wanted to come through." That's not Obama in the loop. That's Obama calling the damn shots. And
Oh, love that.
AI does
That's a
not
good
call
way
the
to think
shots.
about it.
Yeah, people have to call the shots. It's
Hmm.
not AI, it's not humans in the loop. It's AI in the loop. It's AI working in service of your human team. And well, you've got to shed that language, because if you keep talking about it that way, you're subconsciously going to start treating AI as the superior entity, and you're going to defer to AI even at the cost of your team's judgment. And that's a great way to quickly lose market share, brand equity, goodwill, all sorts of things that keep businesses going.
Yeah, I mean, a human in the loop has become like, the go-to way that people, talk about
Yeah.
AI and the human relationship. But I think we should see it more as a, speechwriter, ghostwriter type thing where it's like it is coming from the human, the ideas, the process and everything, and then shifting that down to see where AI fits into that, to
Yeah.
your process, and not just have AI take over the process. So, brilliant. I like that. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ashwin. Where can people find you?
Find me on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Awesome. And then you can follow me at Sonia Bashez everywhere and follow the podcast at Meme Team Pod on YouTube, Spotify, and TikTok. Thank you. Bye.